Language were they speaking? I'm not too sure. It could have been Russian. It could have been Czechoslovakian. It could have been, I think it's between those two, to be honest. It could have been something else, but I mean, I don't speak any other language other than English, so I don't really know. All right. Any other time you saw Ghislaine Maxwell have sexual contact with another female outdoors in the US Virgin Islands other than this models with the unknown language? Are we talking about besides with me as well? I don't know if you participated. I'm asking if you observed her have sexual contact with another female. Another female other than myself. You can answer it however you want. Well, and the list keeps going on. Ghislaine and I and Giuffre and blank participated in, I guess what you would call a foursome in the living room in the main house. Okay, I was asking about outdoors, sorry. Oh, well, I don't know if you'd consider this outdoors, but on the beach, where it's basically an outdoor setting. It's like a little wooden house. It's not a house, only a bed can fit in there. It's right on the beach, it's open. Would you consider that outdoors? I have never been there, so I don't know whether it's outdoors or not. I would consider it outdoors. And how old were you at that time? I don't know. Okay. I have no idea. Again, Ghislaine, myself, Giuffre, another girl in this blue outdoor, I don't know what you would want to call it, cabana, a house, just a bed could fit in. How many times did you visit the island? I wouldn't be able to say, lots of times. More than 5? Definitely more than 5. More than 10? More than 10. More than 20? I would say more than 20. More than 50? I don't think more than 50, but I don't have an exact number. I mean, I think if you look at the flight logs, you know that helps, but then they're not fully complete. We only have flight logs to one plane, and then there's a time I was flying commercially into the island. So it's really hard for me to gauge a number. Okay, do you have any photographs of yourself on the island? I know I used to, but they would be left in that apartment. What other locations did you participate in sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell other than the island? Everywhere. New York, Palm Beach. Where in New York? The mansion, Giuffre's mansion. Okay, anywhere else in New York? Not at her townhouse. Anywhere else in New York? No. In Palm Beach? At the house in Palm Beach? Anywhere else in Palm Beach? No. In New Mexico? The house in New Mexico? Anywhere else in New Mexico? No. What other countries? France, England. We also, I mean, if we're going to talk about other countries, we've got to talk about international travel space or plane space or whatever you want to call it, because it happened all the time on the planes. Okay. Going from different country to country. Where in France did you have sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell? There's a couple of places in France that we used to go to. When you say you used to go to, how many times did you go to France? I think I've been to France 3 times. All right. How old were you when you went to France? I don't know. Did you have a passport when you went to France? I would have had to, yes. You did have a passport when you went to France? Yes. And you went to France 3 times, you believe? Yes. And when you were in France those 3 times, how many of those 3 times did you have sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell? Every time. And in what locations in France did you have sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell? The first time that I remember, we stayed at a really fancy hotel. In what city? Paris. Okay. And it was within the view of the Champs-Élysées. Did you have your own room or a separate room? We all stayed in the same room, but that room had adjoining rooms to it. So, you know, one hotel room, but with different rooms in it. Okay, and anywhere else on that one trip that you went? She brought in a red-headed French girl. She walked her up to her in Paris and, you know, in your presence. In my presence. And she walked up to this French girl to show me how easy it was for her to procure girls. I wasn't very good at it. And, you know, it was part of my training was to bring in other girls. So she walked up to her. Within 5 minutes, she had her number. And that girl came over later that night to the hotel and serviced Giuffre. I didn't see Ghislaine with her. I just know she told me what happened and Giuffre told me what happened. So you were not there? I did not see it. Okay. When did you have sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell at this hotel room overlooking the Champs-Élysées? Before she picked up the redhead. And was that just you and Ghislaine, or was anyone else a participant in that? Giuffre and blank. And where else in France did you have sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell? The south of France? Where? I wouldn't call it so much a hotel. I don't know what you'd call it. It had like big townhouse kind of things that you could rent out. Was this on the same trip or a different trip? Different trip. Okay, who else was present for that? Well, we were going to blank birthday party. It wasn't at the birthday party. Right. It was before the birthday party. Oh, you had sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell before you went to blank birthday party. Mr. Edwards, form. That's correct. And who else was present during your supposed sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell on this occasion? Mr. Edwards, object to the form of the question. It wasn't supposed, it actually happened. And Ghislaine was present. Giuffre was present. I believe blank was present as well. Anyone else? There was someone else on that trip with us, but they weren't involved with the sexual activity at that time. Okay, and what was the other location in France? I believe the same exact place. I mean, we stayed there for a few days. Okay, so the 3 locations are hotel in Paris, same place, same place. Correct. And the second and third same places were on the same trip. Same trip. Okay, and then you had a third trip to France where you did not have sexual contact with Ghislaine Maxwell. Mr. Edwards, form. I believe it's hard for me to remember. I remember going to quite a few different countries on that trip. I don't know if we did it in Paris or not, to be honest. We did it in other places. But I've been to Paris 3 times, or not Paris, sorry, France. Okay, all right. When did you first tell your parents that you would be travelling with Jeffrey Epstein? I'm not too sure when I actually told them. How long after you were working with Jeffrey Epstein did you travel with him? Well, I know my first trip was to New York. I would say anywhere between 6 weeks. I would say after 6 weeks. You had known Jeffrey Epstein for 6 weeks before you started travelling with him, I believe. Am I understanding that correct? I believe so. I mean, that's an approximate answer. And your first trip was to New York? Yes. And did you just go to New York and come back, or did you go somewhere else? I think I just went to New York, but I can't remember if we went somewhere else. Okay, and did you tell your parents you were going to New York? Yes. And do you recall any part of your conversation with your parents about going to New York? I didn't get into details about what I was having to do with Ghislaine and Giuffre. I didn't tell them that, but I told them I was going to New York. And you don't recall telling them anything else about it? I don't know. I mean, I might have called them from New York and told them it was cold and, just simple stuff. But I can't really recall what I spoke to them about. Ms. Millinger, as I understand it, the food is here, so I'm going to suggest that now is a good time to take a break. Sounds good. Ms. Millinger, all right. Videographer, we're off the record at 12:42. Recess taken from 12:42 p.m. to 1:21 p.m. Videographer, we're back on the record at 1:21. Ms. Millinger, all right. Ms. G, I want to talk to you about where you were living in the late 90s. Do you recall? You testified earlier. I believe that you were living at your parents' house and you gave us an address at the time you started at Mar-a-Lago. Yes. Do you remember where you lived previous to living at your parents' house at that time? Like I said, I was a runaway, so there were a lot of different places I lived. One of the places I lived was, like I told you earlier, with blank parents. That was somewhere around Fort Lauderdale, I believe, maybe a little bit outside of it. Okay. Blank got an apartment and I lived in blank apartment for a short period. And where do you recall that being? Somewhere in Fort Lauderdale again. Okay. And then you were living with your parents, or was there another place in between? Then I lived with my parents. Okay, and then where is the next place that you moved? An apartment that Giuffre got for me in Royal Palm Beach. Okay, and you don't know the address of that? No, I wish I could give it to you. I don't know it. And you stayed in that apartment until you left for Thailand in the fall, later in the year in 2002, correct? Yes. Right. Yes. All right, and where did you first stop living with your parents? How old were you when you first stopped living with your parents? Mr. Edwards, object to the form. The very first time? I believe I was 11. Okay, what caused you to stop living with your parents when you were 11? I just had some trouble and my parents thought it would be better if they sent me to California. Okay, what trouble did you have? It's very hard for me to talk about. There was stuff that went on in my life that, made me so I couldn't live with my parents anymore. What went on in your life that caused you to not be able to live with your parents at the age of 11? Do I have to answer this? Well, did you talk to Sharon Churcher about being molested as a child? I did. And you authorised Sharon Churcher to publish that in a newspaper, correct? I don't think I authorised her to do it. I wouldn't say she did it on her own accord, but I talked to her about it and I wasn't aware of exactly what she was going to publish and what she wasn't. So you were able to talk to a reporter for the Mail on Sunday about this, correct? I did tell her a little bit about my past and where I came from. All right, so what caused you to be sent away from your parents' home at the age of 11 to California? Some of the prior abuse, which led me to be a very troubled young teenager. I mean, I guess you wouldn't call 11 a teenager yet, but led me to running away a lot, and my family just thought it was best that I get out of the area and move somewhere else. Okay, you had run away prior to being the age of 11. Yes. All right. Was that reported to the authorities? That I ran away? Yes. Yeah. And where were your parents living at the age of 11? The same address I gave you earlier. Okay, so the authorities associated with Loxahatchee, Florida, were made aware that you had run away from home at the age of 11? Yes. And what abuse had you suffered prior to the age of 11? There was a very close family friend who was a very sick man, and he took advantage. What's his name? Blank. Blank what? Blank. And where is Blank today? I don't know where he is. Does anyone in your family keep in contact with him? No. What did he do to you? He touched me places I shouldn't be touched. He sexually abused me. For how long? I don't know how long. Did you tell that to your parents? They know. How do they know? I told them. Did you tell them when you were under the age of 11 or at the age of 11? I told them later. When did you tell them? It took me a long time to forgive my parents for sending me away. I didn't feel like anybody understood me, so not until later in my life did I feel I was able to talk to anyone about it. Okay, was it reported to the authorities? No, I went too late to talk to anybody about it. Did the event of you being molested cause your parents to split up? I think Sharon reported that, but I don't think that's the case, no. My parents split up because they were really messed up. Your parents split up because they were really messed up? Oh, they just didn't get along. There were a lot of marital problems. When did they split up? I don't really remember what year it was. How old were you? I believe I was living with Jeffrey at the time. With whom did you live in California? My blank. And who else? Blank. And with who else? That's it. And for how long did you live with them? I don't really know how long. Maybe over a year, maybe 2 years. And then what caused you not to live with them anymore? I kept running away from them too. And where did you live in California? I'm sorry? Where in California did you live? Where did they live? Where did you live with them? Selena's. And do you know the address? No. Do they still live there? No. When did they stop living there? I don't know, I haven't kept in contact with them. And you believe you lived with them for a little more than a year? Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I'm not too sure. Did you go to school there? Yes. Where did you go to school? Somewhere near Selena's, I'm assuming. What grade were you in? Middle school? 6th grade, 7th grade? I think 6th grade. And did you go there for more than 1 year or just 1 year? Maybe, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know. Were the authorities in Selena's alerted to the fact that you ran away from home there? Yes. How long was the longest you were away from home in Selena's, California? 2 weeks. And you were in middle school? Indicating. The reporter, I'm sorry, you're... By Miss Manager. Yes. Yes or no? Oh, yes. And then when did you go back to Florida? I don't know. Was your younger brother living with your parents in Florida while you were in California? Yes. And was your older brother living with your parents in Florida while you were in California? I don't think so. How much older than you is he? 5 years. And when you went back to Florida, where did you go to school when you got back? I believe I went to Crestwood Middle School. And did you complete your studies at Crestwood Middle School? Did I get out of middle school there? Yes. Okay, what grades were middle school? 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and when you went back to live with your parents again, that was at the same address in Loxahatchee? Yes. And you don't believe your older brother was in the home at the time? No, he was sent to boarding school. Where did he go to boarding school? Washington. State or city? Washington, above California. When was the next time you stopped living with your parents? They sent me to a group home called Growing Together. Why? Because I kept running away. Were the authorities alerted when you ran away? Yes. And how old were you when you went to live at Growing Together? I don't know, it's hard for me to piece back dates. Off the top of my head, I don't want to guess. I don't think I should guess, I don't know. But you moved directly from living with your parents to living at Growing Together. I wouldn't say directly. I'd say I stayed with my parents for I think I finished school at Crestwood. So I would have been in, I don't know, I guess 8th grade, finished 8th grade. And then I don't know, I really don't know, around 8th grade, you went to Growing Together. I think it was then. And how many years did you live at Growing Together? Over a year. Were you ever in foster care? What Growing Together was like a group home that sent you away to foster parents every night. So you lived in other people's homes during the period of time you were assigned to Growing Together. Well, you stayed at Growing Together during the day, and then at night you get sent home with parents. Did you go to school while you were at Growing Together? Yeah, they offer education there. So the education was at Growing Together? Yeah. You did not attend a Palm Beach county? I did, but you had to earn your levels up to be able to go outside. So I don't remember what level you have to get up to go out to another school. I think there was 7 levels or something, and you had to make it to level 4 to be able to go outside school. So for some period of time you were assigned to Growing Together and you were going to school at Growing Together. And for some period of time you were going to other schools and coming back to Growing Together. Correct. And then when you came back to Growing Together, you were sent to spend the night at a family's home. Yes. So you never slept at Growing Together? No. Did you live, other than living at or staying at Growing Together during the day and sleeping at these other homes at night, is there anywhere else that you recall living in the period between the ages of 8th grade and when you started working at Mar-a-Lago? Besides the ones I've told you about, I did run away from Growing Together quite often. And I did end up being abused by another older guy who I stayed with for I don't know how long. How old were you then? I don't know, I'm sorry. I really wish I could pinpoint dates. I don't know dates. Okay, what was that man's name? Blank. And how long were you living? Were you living with Blank? Yes. And for how long were you living with him? I don't know. Days, weeks, months? I don't know. I mean, it wasn't days. I don't think it was weeks. It would have been close to maybe a few months. Okay, and was Blank prosecuted by federal authorities in South Florida? Yes. And you were located by the FBI, I believe. Yes. And you gave an interview to the FBI concerning your time with blank, correct? Yes. Did you ever get a victim's notification letter regarding your status as a victim in blank blank federal criminal prosecution? I don't know, my parents handled everything. Do you know if your parents received such a letter? I don't know. Have you ever asked them? No, I've never really brought it up with them. It really pissed them off a lot, so I never brought it up with them. It pissed them off that you were living with blank? Yes. Why did it piss them off, if you know? Well, I think they were just disgusted, that this happened to me again, and they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to talk about it. But they were aware of it. Yes. Your dad came and picked you up from the police station? Yes. And your dad would not let you come home? Well, I think it was more my mum didn't want me to come home. Did she say that? She just probably thought I was just going to keep running away again. And did she say that to you? Well, I asked my dad at the police station if I could come home instead of going back to growing together. And he said my mum didn't want me to come home. And I told him if he didn't get me out within a week, I'd run away again and he'd never hear from me again. And how is it that you came back to be living at their house then? I ran away again and I called him up and I said, this is your final chance. And they came and picked me up and they let me live there. And when did you go live with blank? Not long after that. And when did you live with blank parents? Well, I lived with blank's parents before I lived with blank in his apartment. And that was an apartment that blank rented. Blank and his friend, I can't remember his friend's name, Mario, I think his friend's name was. When did you live with blank blank as parents? That was just a brief stint. I didn't really stay there very long, but I was a runaway. That's in between times of, I don't know. How old were you? I don't know. I just want to be clear. Blank rented an apartment that you moved into that he had rented, correct? Correct. And that was after you had lived with blank and his parents, correct? Yes. And that was prior to you and blank living with your parents when you started working at Mar-a-Lago, correct? Yes. Do I have that sequence right? So far, yes. And when did you stop living at your parents'? At the time you started working at Mar-a-Lago? How long after you started at Mar-a-Lago do you stop living with your parents? I don't know exact dates. I was travelling with Giuffre a lot and he was giving me lots of money for the sex that I had with him and Ghislaine. And after, I would say, a short time. I'm not too sure, darling. I don't know. All right, can you... Ms. Menninger, I have no recollection of which number we're on in terms of exhibit. Ms. R, 15. Okay, I'd like to mark as defendant's exhibit 15 a document and see if you can identify it. Actually, before I do, when do you recall ever getting a passport? I got my passport in New York. I don't know what age I was. Okay, and how did you get it? Did you go somewhere or what happened? Giuffre had me fill out paperwork and go to a Kodak shop or something similar of a Kodak shop and get my picture taken. I gave him my picture and my paperwork. He sent it away and I think a week later he said he got it expedited. Did you physically go to an office in New York? Giuffre's office. An office associated with immigration or homeland security or whatever it was called back then. Not that I recall. And do you know how old you were? No. I don't know how old you have to be to get a passport, so I'm not too sure. Exhibit 15 marked. Okay, I'm going to show you Defendant's Exhibit 15. Do you recognise this document? Yes. Is this document the passport application that you filled out? Yes. Is it in your handwriting? Yes. All right. What did you put down as your address at this time to mail the passport to? It's about the second line, third line. Number 13. Well, the third line says mail passport to. What address did you put down? Are we talking about number 13, permanent address? Do not list PO Box Street. No, I'm talking about the third line in the entire thing that says mail passport to. Oh, I'm sorry, up here the blank, blank, blank. All right, so you asked to have the passport mailed to you at your parents' address, right? I don't know if it was mailed to my parents' house, but that's the address I sent. Put down, yes. Okay, and if you look a little bit further to the right, roughly equal with that line, do you see a date that's stamped on there? Yeah, January the 12th, 2001. Okay, and then if you go down a little bit further, as you pointed out, line number 13, you gave your permanent address as your parents' address again, correct? Correct. If you look at box number 12, where it asks for occupation, what did you write down? Masseuse. Okay, if you look at line number 18, have you ever been issued a US passport before? What did you put down? No. All right, and if you go down a little bit further than that, emergency contact, who did you put down? Blank. Okay, so is that the fiancé you were talking about earlier? Yes. In January of 2001, were you still his fiancée? Looks like it, yes. And what address did you put down for blank? It's kind of hard to read. I think that's the A3. I think it's blank blank. I really can't make out the telephone number. Okay. Do you see relationship? Can you read that? Friend. Okay. Do you see just below that there's a line that says number 21? Do not sign application until requested to do so by administrating an oath. Okay. Applicant's signature, age 13 or older. Oh, it's by the signature line? Yeah. And that's your signature? Yes. All right, and this is the document that you recall filling out for your first passport. I don't recall doing it, but yes, it's in my handwriting and it's got all of my information on it. Okay, and on line box 23, it's got your driver's license checked off, right? July the 23rd, yeah. I really can't make out numbers and stuff though. But the box, driver's license is checked off. Yes. Okay, and then if you look in the lower right-hand corner of the page, do you see what we call a basis stamp number? I don't know if you know what that means. No. Just the lower right-hand corner of the document. Giuffre 004721. Okay, thank you. So at January 2001, was blank living blank? Well, he would have had to have been there if I put it down there. Okay, was that the apartment that he had rented? No, it's in Royal Palm Beach. The apartment he rented was in Fort Lauderdale. So this could be my apartment that he lived at with me. Okay, so his apartment where he lived with you was in Royal Palm Beach? Yes. And he rented that apartment? Mr. Edwards, object to the form. Mischaracterization. He lived there with me for a short period. I don't know how long he lived there with me for. And who rented the apartment? Well, Giuffre paid for the apartment. I was the occupant and he was an occupant. Did you ever see the lease? Yes, I believe I had to sign the paperwork saying that I was living there. So you were living at, is it blank blank? I can't honestly read it. It looks like a C, but that doesn't make sense. So January of 2001, you signed a document under oath putting blank blank. Yes. And you put your permanent address and you'll mail your passport to at your parents' address. Yes. Is that right? And it's your position that that is the apartment that Giuffre paid for and you signed a lease? Yes, Giuffre paid for it and I think I had to sign something that said I was going to occupy it. I don't know if James ever did. Okay, and you stayed at that apartment from at least January 2001 until you left in the fall of 2002, right? I would say before then, yes. Like I said, I can't really tell you the exact date that I moved there, but why did you have your passport sent to your parents' house if you weren't living at your parents' house? I don't know. I guess a failsafe. I'm not too sure. When was the next passport that you got? I think I had to reapply for one well, this one expired in 2002. So I would have had to apply for another one. I'm asking, do you remember when you got another passport? This expired January the 10th, 2002. Let me have you put the paper down. Yes. Do you recall applying for another passport? No. Okay, do you recall ever applying for another passport ever? Well, yeah, when I got to Australia I had to. I don't have it on me right now, but I could tell you I had to apply for another one because the other one ran out as expiry. So whenever one expired, you applied for another one from the US, indicating. Have you ever gotten, is that right? Yeah. Have you ever gotten a passport from Australia? An Australian passport? Right. No. Have you ever lost a passport and had to get one replaced? I don't think so. When was the first time that you came back to the US from Australia? October the 16th, 2013. And did you come back before that? No. Did you ever tell Sharon Churchill or Sharon White or Marianne Strong that you were going on a trip to New York in 2011? No. Is it your contention that Ghislaine Maxwell sexually trafficked you to famous people